Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. When most people think of Metal Gear Solid in the 6th generation, their mind goes straight to PlayStation. But what if I told you the second game in the Metal Gear Solid franchise made its way to the original Xbox? It was titled Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance and was a port of the PS2 version with many additions. I played through it recently and I'll give you its history, tell you how I felt about it, and give you its lasting impact. I want to give a huge thanks to Camp Counselor Channel 11 for this recommendation, and thanks to all campers and camp counselors for their support by being YouTube channel members. All footage was captured on an original Xbox, and let's go ahead and hop into this game's history.
This is Snake. Do you read me, Otacon?
Loud and clear, Snake.
Kept you waiting, huh?
The story of the Metal Gear franchise up to the announcement of the second game is long, and I don't want to dive too deep into it, but I'll give you what is essential. The Metal Gear franchise started around 1987 when Hideo Kojima designed and directed a game starring Solid Snake in a stealth-based game that was novel for the time. This would lead to a hit, and Konami would craft a series out of Metal Gear, making a sequel, and in 1998, the PlayStation received Metal Gear Solid. Hideo Kojima would direct, produce, and write this revolutionary game in the 5th generation of consoles. It had in-depth gameplay and had an insanely written plot for the time, full of cutscenes and stealth gameplay that was pitch perfect. It is still considered one of the best games of all time, and would lead to the development of the sequel, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. The sequel would go into development around 1999 as a PlayStation 2 exclusive. The game was set out to take advantage of PS2 hardware and make the game more cinematic. In 2006, a document was found detailing all the ideas that went into this game, and I highly recommend reading it. I put a link in the description. Now, some of these elements would come to fruition and some wouldn't, with a lot changing during development. It even had a pending title at one point of Metal Gear Solid 3 to symbolize the New York skyline. During development, Konami announced Metal Gear X, a Metal Gear game for the Xbox. Some speculated it was a new entry, but it was actually a port of the PlayStation 2 game, making Metal Gear Solid 2 not a PlayStation exclusive. Yet it would take some time to get to the Xbox, with the PS2 version launching on November 13th, 2001 in North America, and a few weeks later in Japan, and in March of 2002 in Europe. It came out to rave reviews and holds a 96 out of 100 on Metacritic and received multiple Game of the Year awards. I do think it's remembered fondly nowadays, but there was some controversy there since Snake, the series star, is only playable for a little over an hour before the protagonist switches to Raiden. For fans of the series, this felt like a significant blow, and some were unhappy about it. Also, there were people that found the story incomprehensible, and when I was growing up, I remember this being a controversial game at the time of its release, at least with its fans, becoming an early example of fan backlash on the internet. Yet critics loved this game, and plenty of people adored it. It sold well, and the Xbox crowd was hotly anticipating its release on the Xbox. The Xbox version would get the subtitle Substance, and many new features would be added to the game. There would be over 300 VR training missions, bonus game modes, and Snake Tales, which were added chapters with gameplay of Snake. This version would be released for the Xbox in North America on November 5th, 2002, and in Europe in March of 2003, and later Substance would get ports to the PS2 as well as the PC. My experience with the Metal Gear franchise stretched back to the PlayStation original. I played it when I was young, and it was very difficult for me, but I enjoyed it. But I spent most of my time with the VR missions game. I never beat it, but it stuck with me. I'm not a mega fan of the series, and the only games that I had played up to a certain point were just the 1st and 4th games. Then I played Metal Gear Solid 2 for the first time on the HD Xbox 360 remaster. I was far removed from any controversy, and I played through this game in a few sittings and enjoyed it. I haven't returned since though, and this is my first time returning to this game in 10 years. I have never touched the Xbox version of this game, and I'm excited to talk to you all about it and tell you how I felt about my experience, starting with the plot.
What the hell is that?
Digging into the plot of Metal Gear Solid 2 is quite a task. The game heavily focuses on telling an epic story with layers and layers of conspiracy. I will explain it, but a full explanation of the plot could be its own hour-long video. Yet, that is a reason to love this game. It is ambitious in its storytelling, offering off-the-wall twists and turns, bizarre characters, and a plot that seems closer to reality as time passes. I love how committed to the plot this game is. It doesn't care if there are multiple layers of conspiracy, or how silly its characters and dialogue can be. It's dedicated to its world building. I ended up getting swept up in this tale of espionage, which sets up so many bizarre elements that it all feels regular in its universe. When the cyber ninja shows up, it almost feels par for the course, which is helped by Raiden, who is in disbelief for half of the game. One of the larger elements of this game is that Raiden takes over for Solid Snake, who was a loved character in the franchise. Now that we are so far removed from the game's launch, it feels like a bold leap. I don't love Raiden as much as I do Snake, but he is an earnest newbie and his character arc fits the story's themes. That's not to say Snake isn't part of it. He shows up in the main part of the story with the codename Pliskin, which is an excellent Escape from New York reference, but he's also playable in the opening of this game for a few hours in a fantastic opening sequence. You start as Snake infiltrating a tanker that stores Metal Gear, a bipedal tank with nuclear weaponry. The game already has layers of political espionage when Russian mercenaries board the ship and take over with a man named Ocelot. Ocelot betrays them and is taken over by Liquid Snake, escaping in Metal Gear Ray and leaving Snake for dead. 2 years later, Raiden shows up at Big Shell, a facility used to clean up an oil spill, and the president has been kidnapped there, and Raiden must rescue him. To your knowledge, Snake is dead, and Raiden doesn't know that Pliskin is Snake, which is funny because as you play it, you know exactly who it is, and it becomes a funny plot device. As Raiden, you get sent on multiple tasks across Big Shell, like cleaning up bombs, and you fight various terrorist members with insane quirks, like a roller skating bomb maker named Fat Man, and a lady with a giant gun that is unable to die and only wishes for death. The eccentric elements of the plot don't end there, and it's a game filled with eccentric elements that are always excellent to see unfold on screen. It never stops being fun, and that is in a game with cutscenes that can last for 10 minutes or more, which is not even in the upper echelon of Kojima games. The way they are written and the characters involved are exciting. I never found this game tiring. There are so many quotables here, and characters say some weird things, and it's so lovable. I love an excellent video game story and games dedicated to telling something unique, which is something that this game achieves. There is nothing quite like its story on the Xbox or even in its generation. It's not for everyone because at times it's like watching a movie, but Metal Gear is always building a world, and I think it works in hand with its gameplay to create something unique. Now I want to get into light spoiler territory. Before I get into it, I just want to let you know that I love this game's ending. It's still one of the most bonkers endings ever, and it offers a lot of interesting ideas. Overall, I'd say I love this game's plot. But if you want to skip the upcoming spoilers, go ahead and skip to the next chapter on YouTube and get into the gameplay section. In Metal Gear's final hours, this game descends into pure madness with Raiden discovering that he is a plant and almost everything is being orchestrated. The Colonel and Rose, who you speak to throughout the game, are AI constructs that guide you the whole time. I remember hearing this back in the day, and being guided by AI constructs felt silly, but what's funny is as we move through the 2020s, it feels a little more close to home than you would expect, and it talks about how information in the digital age resembles an echo chamber where you only hear what you want to hear, and truth doesn't really factor into the equation. A world where we feel individualistic, but we're guided by algorithms and useless knowledge. A story element that I feel like only gets more and more interesting as time goes on. Games in the 6th generation had good stories, but generally, I don't expect them to be able to weave something as compelling as this, with interesting themes that continue through time. Sure, it's absurd at times, and it has an avant-garde quality, but its off-the-wall nature never stops being fun, and it's a grand plot to follow. Metal Gear Solid 2 has one of the best stories in the 6th generation. Let's get into Metal Gear Solid 2's gameplay, which has as much style as the plot does. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a stealth game, but it doesn't have a free-flowing third-person camera. Instead, it opts for a classic placed camera style. You move from room to room with enemies scattered everywhere. You can handle them however you want by sneaking around them silently, knocking them out, or killing them all. You just want to make sure you are safe to do so, because by being loud, you can raise alarms, and once they are raised, you will have to deal with an army breathing down your neck. There's a lot of elements to the gameplay design, but to make stealth gameplay feel good, it has to work well with movement, and the control on the sticks here is fast and responsive. Movement is smooth, and there are tiny elements that build together to make it feel well done and cohesive, such as the ability to go into prone mode, which has you crawling in ducts in first person and getting under small obstacles. You can hug walls and knock on them to attract enemies close to you. You can hide in lockers and get hit by doors falling off of lockers. You can do so many little things, making for a seamless experience with movement. It's never overwhelming, and I felt like I never forgot my moveset even if it was huge, and it does feel like you have a lot of options to take on enemies. The amount of gadgets and weapons you get as the game goes on is outstanding too. You can swap these using the left and right triggers, and you get thermal goggles, mine detectors, sleep dart guns, AKs, and long-range microphones, on top of many other things. There's something about the variety in tech that allows you to handle situations in each section of the game differently. It gives you a lot of tools to take on with a fairly linear experience. The game is set up so the AI tells you exactly what to do, but you can carry out these tasks anyway on your path there. I like the structure, something that adheres to a regiment, but the goal can be obtained in multiple ways. It's creative, and I love the map layout here. The tanker, which is the game's intro, is small, but it's perfect how everything fits together with some tight level design. It's a bunch of rooms layered on each other with various ways and paths to avoid enemies within them. The tanker ends at a great climax where you're in a room with tons of soldiers and have to take pictures of Metal Gear from various angles. You must shuffle around them and hide under projectors to get great shots. It works with the perfect radar system, showing you the vision cones of everybody on the map layout. I love the radar in these games, and it's probably the most handy tool that you have. Use this and throw in the added bit of Metal Gear humor, where the commander will just yell "Intruder to the right" as a training exercise and catch you completely off guard. This intro plays exceptionally well here, and the smaller scale map sets you up for the Big Shell with Raiden. The Big Shell is a complex setup into multiple hexagons with bridges and paths connecting all of them. Each section of this map has obstacles you must overcome to make each room feel special, such as the bridge with C4 that you have to snipe to detonate, or the warehouse where you're looking down at enemies and bunches of boxes where you have to go over the edge to get rid of a bomb. It makes every section feel memorable, and it's not a gigantic complex, but small, intimate, and detailed. That's great because every element is made with gameplay in mind, and no space is wasted. I found every room intriguing, and it was enjoyable from start to finish to see what each room would bring you next. It's explorative and creative with its level design, and that's how it keeps you hooked in its entirety alongside its story. Now, I am heaping a ton of praise on this game, and I do think it's deserved. But there's one element that I just found a little awkward, and that's the first-person gameplay. The implementation is what's uncomfortable here, and it's specifically because of the Xbox controller. Since the Xbox controller does not have shoulder buttons, which on the PlayStation made it easy to move in the first person just by tapping R1 to swap into the first person mode, instead they moved it to clicking the stick. I do think it's okay, just maybe a bit odd. It never feels quite right, and you need to look in first person quite often. But this is an element that I do like, because it encourages you to look at everything versus just running through it all. Many games in this era have a first person view mode, but there's really no reason to use it. But here, it's essential, especially when you need to change quickly to get a quick gunshot in. That is the only control issue I have though. Honestly, it's not a deal breaker. You get a grip on it, and the only times it can feel annoying is when you're in the boss battles and you need to swap quickly. You can't move in first person, so it's a lot to think of when switching to first person. These boss battles are excellent though, with eccentric characters coming together. It's a great time. And I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is a smooth controlling game with much up its sleeve. It encourages exploration, and it's always a joy to play. I do have a slight annoyance with it, but you do get used to it as you go on, and it's easy to get sucked into the stealth gameplay of this one. If anything, I just wanted more of the gameplay. So much of this game is dedicated to the story, and that's great too. It's a game that you wish you wouldn't finish because you love exploring its gameplay, which makes it easily replayable. And once again, gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 2 absolutely nails it.
Retinol pattern recognized. You are cleared to enter.
The audio in Metal Gear Solid is one of the most iconic parts of its package. If there are elements that have leaked into the consciousness more than anything, it's the sound bites. From the sound of alerting enemies, the calls you receive,
Colonel.
or the great voice work of David Hayter playing Solid Snake.
Hold on. I thought the idea of original sin was that you had to work even harder at being good because you were born evil.
Well, yeah, that too. Very good, Snake.
Sonically, Metal Gear comes together and is thoughtful in its sound design to make something unique and fun. The sounds of your footsteps and the ambiance are cold and fit perfectly with this game. It kept much of what made the original work so well and made staples out of the noises that the original developed. Nothing is more iconic than alerting an enemy and hearing that alert noise. The sound design is pretty impeccable. It's the same with the music composed for this game, with Harry Gregson Williams and Norihiko Hibino both composing the tracks. This game hops genres with a mix of breakbeat, jazz, and orchestral works. The Metal Gear theme is always iconic, and it's one of the best pieces of video game theme music. But to me, this game is defined by its jazz soundtrack. I love some of the songs here, with one notable one being Fortune's theme. What starts as a sad saxophone solo
Come, put me out of my misery.
becomes a breaking techno song.
Is there anyone here that can give me happiness?
It portrays many of the game's themes through an orchestral work, and not only that, it's a beautiful listen. Many areas are accented by gorgeous jazz or solid breakbeat songs emblematic of the era in which it was created, all well made, keeping the story's action powerful. The voice acting is top shelf stuff as well, with many great voice actors doing excellent work. You have Quentin Flynn playing Raiden as a complete outsider who is surprised at every turn, and it makes for a convincing character. Notable actors like Jennifer Hale, Phil Lamar, and Earl Bone show up and do some excellent work. Even lesser-known voice actors do a great job and deliver sometimes silly dialogue without a sense of sarcasm, and it helps sell the world. David Hayter as Solid Snake is one of the most notable parts of the game. It's one of those times where the voice embodies the role and settles into it. The sound work in every facet is excellent, and it's one of the most memorable parts of the experience. Visually, Metal Gear Solid 2 is a standout. There isn't much that looked like it at the time, and in terms of realism, it would be topped, but its style still is solid and looks good on the original Xbox. On the Xbox though, the port does have some frame rate issues, especially in boss fights and cutscenes. I'd say it's fine, it's very infrequent, and it's 100% playable, but it does pop up. I'd say the only time it really ruined gameplay was during the Harrier boss battle, and it only happens for a few seconds, but it's when you need to shoot the plane. I don't think it damaged anything. I still beat the boss battle, but it's still there. Otherwise, it plays and looks great on the console. Even if some weather effects are missing on the Xbox version, I found that it didn't really affect the experience. To some, that's going to be the end-all be-all, but for me, it still retains an incredible charm and is not a deal breaker. If anything, it still looks excellent on the Xbox. The game supports 480p output, and all textures and locales look clean. This game goes for a cinematic look with so many rapid angles and blurred actions that make it feel visually unlike anything else at the time. I love how the camera captures environments and emotions and creates that tension and cinematic feel that a game with such a huge story needs. The action looks great in the cutscenes, and I love its style. The environments are cold and industrial, featuring a ton of grays, and it can be drab, but that's the point. There's a lot of the same look since you're only in 2 places for most of the game, but there's enough detail to make each room feel like something new to explore. Looking around at it in first person, you can notice lots of new information and small notes that show love was crafted in each environment you go into. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a great looking game with a cinematic style that is unmatched for the time. Unfortunately, the Xbox version does have some slowdown, but it's never a hindrance. It's all in a good resolution and the character models have a great detail, all with a solid range of expressions that make them stand out in the cast. Visuals are just another facet of this game that Metal Gear excels in.
Jack, you're great!
Substance is not a direct port of Sons of Liberty from the PS2. Instead, it is a version with tons of goodies stuffed into it. However, it's only a timed exclusive as the PS2 would get Substance with an exclusive skateboarding mode. The Xbox version unfortunately did not get that. You get the giant VR mission mode added for this version, which I love seeing. I spent a lot of time playing the original VR mission game, and it's more the same here but split between the main characters. You can test out shooting ranges, do unique sneaking missions, and play alternative styles of missions. There are over 300 to play, and although they're quick, that's what makes them addictive to run through and play. These are a great choice to pick up and play, making this package filled with content. Especially when you consider stuff like the photography mode and bomb disposal, it's insane how much they pack in here. They are short burst experiences having you clean up bombs or other small things quickly, and there's also a boss fight mode, and I think the theater mode here is really silly, where you can take cutscenes from the game and swap out character models. Each has a fun hook to it, and it's well worth running through, and it's an entertaining package. Another exciting addition is Snake Tales. These are missions added to the game from Snake's perspective to appease those who were upset that he wasn't in the game enough. There is no dialogue or cutscenes, it's all shown to you through giant text blocks. I don't love these, but they're a fine addition. They feel like missions that are similar to the base game with little stories tied to them. They include more prominent roles from side characters, and if you want extra time with the game, it's a nice little bonus, but I think the VR missions are the superior showcase of additional features in Substance, but it's nice to bolster this package with even more to do. Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance is a stellar game. I know I've been heaping praise onto this game, but those final moments have really been sticking with me after beating it. The entire experience has excellent stealth gameplay and a story that remains excellent over 20 years later. The Xbox version gets flack for some frame rate issues and some weather effects that are not similar to the PS2 version, but for the most part, I don't think it affects the game in any way. It still looks excellent, plays well, and the story is riveting. If you have the Xbox version, I don't see any reason not to play it. Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance is a great game that I think you should play it in any way that you possibly can, and I'd say the Xbox version is one of the best games I have fully covered on this channel, and it's left a lasting impact on me. This was extremely hard to put on my ranking list of original Xbox games. I've covered 92 games so far on the channel, and this is easily in the top 3, but where to place it is tough. Both Crimson Skies and Project Gotham Racing 2 are peaks in their genres that generation. I think the lasting impact of Metal Gear Solid is a bit more substantial than Project Gotham Racing to me, and that was honestly a really tough call. All 3 of these games are S-tier games. Yet Crimson Skies is an incredible flight sim with non-stop fun gameplay. And I'm not sure how controversial this is going to be because it's very, very close, but Metal Gear is going to go in number 2. My reasoning is that Crimson Skies is amazing all around on the Xbox, and maybe the fact that Substance has a better version elsewhere in the 6th generation, even if it's slight, holds it back from hitting that number 1 spot. Me saying that though, I do still think it is an incredible game, and I do consider my top 3 here to be some S-tier releases on the Xbox. As covered before, the PS2 version, upon its release, was met with universal acclaim. There were controversies over Snake not being the lead, and some hated Raiden's design, and if you go back to old internet forums, you can find people despising him. But this game did still have plenty of fans. When the Xbox version was released, it was met with favorable reviews with an 87 out of 100 on Metacritic. It was mainly met with high praise, with outlets like G4 giving it a 10 out of 10, saying the extra features helped make this a complete package. GameSpot gave it an 8.7, saying that the additional features weren't enough for them, but the core gameplay was excellent. IGN gave it a 9, saying it was a must-play, and Official Xbox Magazine in November 2002 gave it a 9 out of 10, saying they loved the look. Even if it stuttered, they still thought it was immersive, but they didn't like the twist at the end of the game at all. You can now play this entry on multiple consoles, which has expanded its reach. Metal Gear Solid 2 had sold 7 million copies by 2004, making it a game that sold extremely well and was played by many. And it has gone on to get an HD remaster for the PS3, 360, and Vita, and it's also very recently in 2023 gotten a remaster for most major consoles. Over time, this game has only grown in popularity. Growing up, I knew this game as the Black Sheep, but now it's considered one of the greatest games ever made, very slowly reaching higher and higher in the best games of all time ranking lists. On Backlogged, it holds a 4.5 out of 5, making it the highest rated Xbox game on the website. Tons of people heap praise onto it in the reviews, and it's gone on to be beloved. Nowadays, the praise is at its peak because I know people love digging into the themes of this game. As for me though, I found this game to be riveting, fun, and a bit silly, making it unique on its own and still a great game to play. Metal Gear Solid 2 is all around a fantastic game. But that does wrap it up for today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to keep up with the retro Xbox content. Be sure to comment below with any Metal Gear Solid memories. I'd love to hear from you. And I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.